Hi everyone, welcome to today's Learn with Google webinar on metrics for success in the mobile apps ecosystem. My name is Sarah Moqued and I'm a marketer here on the Google Analytics team. We've got two really great speakers for you today, Adam Singer and Andrew Wales. And so I'll be handing it over to them in just a moment, but before I do that, I've got to go through just a few quick housekeeping items. So Michael, if you could please shift to the next slide for me there. Thanks so much. So the first question that we always get is that we keep hearing, is this webinar going to be recorded? Yes, I promise you indeed the webinar is going to be recorded. You'll be receiving a link to that within about a week, and we'll also be posting on the Google Analytics blog. We also have some widgets that you'll see in your console. The first one is that Q&A widget, so please feel free to submit your questions at any time during the webinar, and then we'll be trying to respond to those via chat during the webinar and take some of those live at the end of the webinar as well. And in addition, we'll do a follow-up blog post where we'll take some of those top questions. There's also that resources widget, the one that looks like a little folder, and you've got a link there that takes you right into getting started with mobile app analytics. We really encourage social sharing today, so if you're going to do that on Google Plus or Twitter, please use that hashtag measure, and this hashtag is really part of a bigger community of measurement experts, so we'll be looking at those tweets and Plus posts, and also there will be other people who may be interested in sharing with you and learning more. And then finally, before you go today, if at any time you need to leave before the end or even at the very end, please do fill out that survey. And obviously this helps us, but it's not just for us. It's good for you too, because if you do the survey, you'll be automatically entered into a drawing to win a Nexus 7. So with that, I'm going to get ready to hand it over to Adam Singer. Let me just give you a brief introduction for our two speakers. So Adam is a product marketing manager on the Google Analytics team, and he focuses on marketing our core GA features, which of course includes mobile app analytics. And he also manages our Google Analytics social communities. And Andrew Wales is a developer programs engineer here at Google, and he works with developers to really ensure they're getting the most out of Google Analytics. And he's a really passionate member of our app developer community as well, so he's going to do a great live demo for you after Adam takes you through the story. So I'm going to hand it over to Adam now.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So today we're really going to go over three things. First thing we're going to go through is just the state of mobile. So I know you guys know mobile's hot, but I'd like to share sort of the current situation as we see it in mobile at Google. The second thing we're going to go through is the measurement methodology for Google Analytics. You know, we really put a lot of thought into our new mobile app analytics product. And then the third thing we're going to do is go through the new GA mobile app analytics, and Andrew's going to take you through a couple of the cooler reports. And so that's everything we're going to go through today. If there's something you want to see or have a question, you can always feel free to tweet at Google Analytics or tweet at me, Adam Singer. Always happy to help there. So let's get started. Mobile apps, as you guys know it, are changing the consumer world. And I'm not going to read through all the stats on this slide, but I think the really interesting thing to consider is, you know, we're approaching, on Google Play alone, we're approaching 1 million apps. And it sounds like a lot, right? But if you look down at another stat, you know, there have been over 50 billion downloads of apps on Play. So despite there being nearly 1 million apps, when you consider the amount that people are downloading mobile apps, the opportunity is huge, right? If you're not getting involved now, you should soon. You're still not late. This is really a blue ocean for you if you don't currently have a mobile app. Some other cool research. This just came out from Pew Research Center. They share a lot of interesting research about you know, the internet, about demographics using technology, and a pretty cool stat, more than half of Americans actually now own a smartphone. And if you look at this chart, you can see smartphone ownership is up and to the right, other cell phone or no cell phone is down and to the right. Actually, in San Francisco where I am, I cannot think of a single friend of mine who doesn't own a smartphone. It would actually be kind of weird. So I think eventually the day will come sooner rather than later that everyone in the country will have a smartphone, right? And so taking advantage of that shift now is going to really well position you for the future. And just to crystallize this, I know it's interesting to hear stats. All these numbers seem really big, right? So much usage. But if you look at, you know, something as simple as St. Peter's Square in 2005 versus 2013, you can see it very visually how basically everyone is documenting the world around them. Everyone is using mobile as a layer of their life. And I think you guys can see this for yourselves, right? Next time you go to a concert, just look around and see the number of people who are documenting the concert for their friends, for their social networks, in addition to enjoying it, right? And I actually think there's a little bit of a backlash of that. I think like more people are actually trying to strike a balance, but it is really interesting to see. It's a generational platform shift. My generation as well as the up-and-coming younger generation, them using mobile, they're very mobile native, they're very comfortable there documenting their life. So I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens next. But from a business standpoint, it's not just usage of mobile by a new generation. It's spurring new types of conversions for businesses. And so today we're going to talk about apps specifically, but also, I want you guys to think about, because most of you probably have an app and a website, think about how just your business is optimized for mobile beyond web, beyond app. Do you have click-to-call set up in your AdWords extensions? Are you tracking cross-device, online to offline? All of these cool things. You want to consider how your conversion strategy is evolving for mobile, because if you just have web conversions on a mobile device, people aren't going to fill out a huge long form like they will on the web. You want to make things simple. You want to make things intuitive and make sense. So speaking of mobile conversions, recently we conducted a survey with our friends at ClickC. I actually write a once-monthly column with ClickC on where marketers were at with measuring mobile apps, because we wanted to see, is this new area for marketers? Have marketers jumped on board years ago and are already fluent in this? And what we found is more than half of marketers are either novice or have no understanding of mobile app measurement. So I think it's typically been up to the developer to implement app analytics, use analytics to improve their app. But I think in the future, we're going to see this a joint area like web analytics, like developers and marketers are going to collaborate here. So it's still a new area for marketers, but I think that's going to change, and we're going to see pretty much everyone having, at least some knowledge of app analytics in the near future. Speaking about opportunities, mobile app revenues worldwide continue to increase. So if we think that there's a lot going on in app analytics right now from a revenue standpoint, in the next few years there's a lot of projected growth, actually up to $46 billion in 2016. So, and these projections may actually even come in low. It may even be higher. In-app purchases are something that's also projected to increase, and I think this is an interesting one. If you think back, not even too long ago, people were a little reticent to conduct e-commerce, not even 10 years ago, right? And I think with mobile, people are going to get to the point they're as comfortable making a purchase on their mobile devices with a mobile app as they are on web. Certainly not everyone is there yet. There is definitely a discrepancy, but I think it's going to come a point where people are just comfortable with digital purchases agnostic of device. And so this is another area we're going to see continue to grow. So hopefully that provides a good overview and gets you guys excited. It's similar to social and the growth that we've seen over the last 5-6 years. Mobile is obviously the next huge growth area for marketers, for developers, for analytics. And so you guys are already experts at developing and marketing apps. So today we're going to talk about how to measure and iterate your app using mobile app analytics. So really, from a Google perspective, when we developed mobile app analytics, we thought about 3 things. Really, all of the metrics that you want to measure are in 3 buckets. Acquisition, so I think that's pretty clear. That's to help improve app discovery and drive installs. That's things like new users, active users, and acquisition channels. Engagement may be the most important area for you to focus on. And the reason I say that, I wrote a column on ClickC about why loyalty is the killer metric for your mobile app. So why is this the case? If you have a mobile app and you do all these awesome marketing tactics to get tons of people to download your app, and they launch it once, you've sort of failed. If they're not delighted by your app, if it's not has such great utility, they're launching it every day, if it sits on like a 3rd or 4th screen or folder in Android or iOS, then you fail because they're not passionate about it. They're not going to tell their friends about it. And so you could funnel all this money into additional acquisition, but if the app isn't sticky, if your users aren't loyal with it, then it may be premature. And so that's why as you start to scale up marketing, you really want to look at engagement. And then outcomes, so of course everyone's favorite bucket. Outcomes would be things like app sales if you're an e-commerce app, or ad monetization if you're an ad-supported game. And so this is something you want to look at from a business standpoint. But of course, all of these things work together, right? When you're acquiring new users, you want to see how those new users engage with your app and how they lead to outcomes in your app. Going back to some research we did with ClickC, we actually asked marketers, hey, what metrics matter to you most? And I think we were really excited to see that marketers get it, right? Most marketers are interested in seeing engagement and usage of apps. So I think marketers are getting pretty smart here. I think they're realizing that revenue generated from our app is fine, downloads are fine, but really we want people who are passionate about using that application and are going to use it every day and tell their friends. So going forward, for GA Mobile App Analytics, what is it? It's a new set of reports that are tailored for mobile app measurement. We didn't just reskin GA Web. This is actually built from the ground up to be a mobile-first product. It's a more powerful mobile SDK that's super easy to implement. Developers are telling us they can get it implemented in under 5 minutes. So I think you'll find how our famously easy web installation will carry over to mobile. We have a new users revamped sign-up flow. So actually, if you go to google.com Analytics and sign up for a new account, we ask you, do you want to track a website or do you want to track an app? And we also speak the language of the mobile app world. So instead of page views, we have screens per session. Instead of visitors, we have new and active users. So we're speaking specifically to mobile app developers, and that's really important. You want to see reports that speak the language that matters to you. So I wanted to take you through, I know we just sort of went through these buckets. This is what the path looks like from an app promotion all the way through to goals and outcomes. So, someone downloads your app or someone finds your app, they visit in the App Store, they install it. That leads to new users. Those users engage with your app, and it leads to outcomes. So this is just a bit of a visualization similar to web, which you guys are already familiar with. But really consider the whole path and how you're going to delight users at every portion. So 2 super quick examples before we get into reports. Slacker Radio is actually beating ROI goals with analytics. They were able to get a 70% improvement in cost per download looking at their mobile app analytics data. And then another super quick one, Magma Mobile, they're driving ad revenue with analytics. So they were able to, from 130 million Android app installs, they now have 14 million active users. And now what they're doing is they're focusing on, well, which tactics worked to get those active users, and how can we get more active users, not just more app installs? Because I think the worst thing that you guys can do is, market an app to the wrong people. They download it once, great, but then they never engage with it. So some quick best practices for mobile app analytics before we get into the actual reports. Hopefully you guys are already familiar with GA, but 3 things you want to do is you want to track different apps in separate properties. You want to track different platforms and app versions in the same property. And you want to track app additions based on feature similarities. 2 other quick things. The app analytics setup process, I just want to share, is really easy. Your analytics account manager should set up your new app property in your analytics account really easy, and then your app developer can download the SDK for Android and iOS and set that up. So what is the SDK? And Andrew can get into more technical details, but we've just made it better. It's easy to implement. It's open wire format, so this will support custom solutions for basically any mobile app platform you'd like. It's opt-out ready, so if you're in a country where opt-outs are necessary, that's pretty easy to do. And it's also secure and lean, so less battery data will be sent. I'm just going to go through a super quick overview of the new reports and then let Andrew take you through them real time, because there's really only so much you can see in a slide. So app overview, this is basically the report you would log into every day. This lets you see your important metrics for your app at a glance, everything that we went through in the acquisition. So things like number of downloads and which sources accounted for them, things like new users, and see who's returning to your app multiple times. Same thing in the app overview. This brings together in just one dashboard everything you want to see. So you'll be able to see your monetization metrics and your outcome metrics right in the same dash. Play sources lets you see deep insight into what's working in play and understand the quality of each campaign. This lets you optimize your marketing spend and make sure you have a nice, robust mix of tactics bringing you new users. Our mobile device overview report, that just lets you see which devices, OS versions, and networks your users prefer to optimize against. It matters greatly for connecting apps and understanding which versions to support. There's not too much action you can take with top network operators, but that one's also interesting to see here. FlowViz is another report you're probably familiar with regular GA. This lets you see how users are proceeding through screens in your apps, and I think this is an even better report in mobile app analytics and regular GA simply because you probably have less screens in your app than you have pages on your site. So this is pretty visual to be able to see your app visitors actually moving through your application and determine if you're suffering attrition at any point. If you have a commerce flow in your app, you'll want to see where people are going. You'll want to test different things. Maybe different home screen promotions can get people to add something else to their order. But this is a great way to visualize it and see what's going on. The loyalty report, this shows your highest value users. So with the loyalty report, this is a great report. If your loyalty report looks like this, you probably have a pretty sticky app. Most people in this report are launching the app far more than 4 or 5 times. Actually, these users are very loyal. And so if you saw at the top of the loyalty report, wow, people are in the last month only launching your app once or twice, that's a pretty big indication your app isn't sticky, and you want to revisit that, dig in further, and see why your app isn't sticky and why users aren't engaging and relaunching your app. App versions, pretty straightforward. This is one for your development team. It lets you confidently deprecate older versions, and it'll determine which versions you need to support on an ongoing basis. Crash and exception report. This one seems like it's just for your developers, but it's actually for your marketers too. So why is that? If your app crashes a lot, it's not a good user experience. So marketers go into this report, and if there's an amount of crashes that is unacceptable to you, and maybe you need to talk with your development team and determine what an acceptable level is, you want to work with them to address that, because unfortunately you can be doing all this great work, but if you have a buggy app, that's going to provide a bad user experience, and that could hurt your marketing efforts. And Andrew can talk to that a little bit more. So just some top-line benefits. Developers use these reports to iterate your apps based on data, identify and fix problems, know when to deprecate old versions, and understand what features are used. And this is a really cool one, understanding what features are used. So a lot of really popular apps have actually grown out of other apps where the application developer noticed, oh, wow, everyone is using this one specific feature. I actually think that's how Instagram was created. So look at what features are really used, and you might actually have data there that tells you you need to pivot your application in a new direction. Maybe something simpler is actually 1,000 times stickier, and that's where you should go. Marketers, you'll want to use data to optimize high conversion referral sources and ads. You want to report success to stakeholders, right? If you're VC funded, hey, show how sticky your app is. You want to improve in-app purchases and revenue, and really see a holistic view of your application performance. So I just wanted to show very quickly how easy this is. I think we've tried to be true to the simplicity of GA on the web with apps. You'll want to simply create a new account in Analytics. And super easy, we're asking you, do you want to track a website or an app? You'd obviously select app. You would grab the tracking ID, and then you'd receive your tracking ID as well as links to the Android SDK and the iOS SDK. Then you would add the code snippet to your app. Really simple, copy-paste. And that's it. You can also do things like use auto-tagging to test and iterate on ad strategy. If you're advertising your app, please always test links. Please always tag links. You will always want to do that so you can see what's performing. And you can use our URL builder to test other strategies. So if you're promoting your app in social, you'll want to tag your URL, see what's actually working to drive people to your app install page, and download your app. You can also measure ad effectiveness and lifetime user value in your app. So don't just look at what ads are bringing in new users, look at what ads are bringing in new revenue. You'll want to, just like on web, be outcome oriented. And yes, you do want to look at KPIs, but look at how your actual marketing is attributing to whatever your goals are with your app. And it might not be revenue. It might just be engagement if you're a brand. And we actually also, one other thing to mention, we just released a full integration with Google Play. So this was announced at I/O. And this is going to be a really great way to be able to see basically the full picture of your app in Google Play. That way you're able to make the best decisions. And just one other quick thing to mention, if you are an existing GA user, we have actually launched an Android app for Google Analytics where you can actually get app analytics for your app on a different Android device. So you can track your app on an app on another device. I know that's a little bit meta, but it's pretty cool. So really, in summary, GA Mobile App Analytics lets you see the entire picture of your app and also view your web and mobile app analytics anywhere with our Android app. So I'm going to pass now to Andrew. I know I went really quickly. I wanted to leave us time on the call for a quick demo, and then we're going to do a Q&A. So Andrew, take it away.
Thanks, Adam. So Adam just gave you a great overview of the Google Mobile App Analytics product and went through a lot of the reports pretty quickly. What I wanted to do in the next few minutes is kind of walk through an account, show you some real data, and walk through a couple of these reports, the ones that I think are actually probably the most important for developers and marketers, and show you how you can pull actionable insights out of these reports. So I'm going to start here in the app overview report, which Adam also mentioned. As he mentioned, we wanted to put together with Google Mobile App Analytics a brand new set of reports that are really tailored to app developers and marketers. So we really wanted to bring the dimensions and metrics that developers and marketers should really care about right up to the front. So I'm going to show you a bunch of standard reports that do this. But before I do that, I wanted to call out two things. The first is I'm going to show you a bunch of standard reports, not a bunch, a good number. But keep in mind that you can also create your own reports. So if you see metrics and dimensions in here that you think might be able to answer some questions that you have about how users are using your app, you can always go to that customization tab and create your own custom reports. So that, just like the web, you can create custom reports here as well. And the second piece is, although it's not in the scope of this webinar, but in terms of actually sending us data that ultimately ends up in these reports, Adam mentioned using the SDK, which is really the main way that most developers will be sending us app data. But I did want to call out that for those developers, if you talk to your developers and they're concerned about the size of the SDK, I know it's obviously very important to make sure that your app is as lean as possible. If they're concerned about the size and are not necessarily into the idea of using an SDK, you can also send us data from your app using something called the measurement protocol. And you don't need our SDK at all to do that, and it's very simple to do. So you can check that out on developers.google.com/analytics. Great, so I'm going to jump back in here and give you the tour through the reports. So Adam talked about sort of three main stages of that user lifecycle that we were really focused on when we developed these reports, and that's kind of where I want to start. And the first is acquisition, or where your users came from, which campaigns and marketing efforts drove users to download their apps. So we're going to start there. And the second is going to be engagement, so what they're going to do in the app after they download and start using it. And we have a couple of reports that I think really can give you insight into what they're doing and how you can actually improve that to achieve whatever your goals are. And the third is really connected to that, and that's outcomes. So of the goals that you set for your users, whether that's a sign-up or a certain number of games played or maybe an in-app purchase, so which of those are ultimately being completed or not completed by a user, and we have a set of reports that you can look at there as well. Great, so let's start with acquisition. And here, as the screencast refreshes here, this is the Google Play Sources report. And this is really for Android. I'm going to talk about Android specifically here, and then later on it's going to be about Android and iOS together. But as you all know, users download your Android app by going to Google Play, right? But they may have been sent to Google Play through a pretty wide variety of means. So it could have been through a paid advertising campaign, or maybe you sent out a marketing email, or you have a link on your website, etc. And as a developer or a marketer, there's kind of two things you want to do here. You want to make sure that you can see which marketing efforts, campaigns, etc. Are driving those downloads via Google Play. The second thing you want to do is, after the user actually downloads that, you want to be able to see what the downstream value is, right? So it's not just that a user downloads the app that's important, it's what they do after that. It's how long they spend with the app, what they purchase in the app, etc. And by connecting what happens downstream back to the original campaigns, you can better value your marketing efforts and figure out where you need to spend more of your time and effort and maybe where you should spend less. So this Google Play Sources report is really designed to do both things. So first of all, here you can see on the left, the rows, it's segmented here by source and medium. So we can see at a high level which sources are driving users to download our apps through Google Play. So here you can see we have some direct traffic, we have some paid Google Ads, and a couple other sources as well. Now right next to that, we can see really easily the number of new users. So in this time period, you can see quickly how many new users has each source brought me. But also to the right of that, it's not just about that download. Remember, it's about the downstream engagement. So we can show you the number of sessions from each source, but also things like the average session duration. So now we can get a sense of, okay, for people who come in through Google Ads, how long are their sessions with my app on average? And how does that compare to my other marketing efforts? It gives you a signal about the quality of that user and the quality of that campaign. And maybe even more directly to that point, you can also see in-app revenue over here. So of the users who came in through a specific source and medium, how much did they ultimately spend making in-app purchases if your app offers in-app purchases? And that's obviously very valuable to sort of calculating the return on your investment for a particular marketing campaign. So this is the Google Play Sources report. And basically it's ground zero. It's where you want to go for all your information about acquisition, how your campaigns are working, and how you should value those campaigns as well. So the next thing I want to jump to is engagement. So after you actually acquire a user, obviously the next thing that you'd want to know is, what are they actually doing in my application? And we have a whole series of reports that are designed to help you figure that out very quickly. And I want to start here with the Devices and Network Overview report. And Adam showed this report as well. What's really nice about this report is that it lets you very quickly understand what devices, what hardware users have. And really, it tells you what you should be building your product or designing your content for in terms of hardware. This is especially important for developers, but it's also important for marketers and pretty much anyone else involved with the product as well. So in this specific case, again, this is live data. This is actually a game that one of our engineers has put out for Android and iOS. So it's called Smiley Lines, by the way. I was obliged to promote that in the webinar. Go check it out. Anyways, so this is live data actually from his game. And you can see that some of the things he might pick out from here is that he still has about 22% of his users here. You can see that in the OS versions chart. 22% that are using a version of iOS prior to 6.1.4. So if there are specific APIs there that are only available past that, it's still a pretty sizable percentage that aren't there yet, so you may not want to introduce that feature. Or if you do, you may want to have a way to make sure that it sort of fails very elegantly for those users so their experience isn't interrupted. Another thing you can see really easily here are top device models. What's interesting about his game is actually that his users are split pretty evenly between iPhone and iPad. You can see this right down here. We have 45% on iPhone and 42% on iPad. So certainly at this point, if he's thinking about what features he's going to add and how that's actually going to look when he's designing the UI for a great experience, he needs to think about both iPhone and iPad, those small and the larger screen experiences. And then down here, especially for Android, where there's many more devices rather than just an iPhone and an iPad, you can see screen resolution and then the number of sessions there as well. So if you have a ton of different Android models using the phone, using your app, you can quickly see, what are my top screen resolutions? What are the things I need to be thinking about in terms of designing my UI? So that's the devices and network overview. Continuing on in engagement, I want to show you the engagement flow report. And this is one that Adam also showed you as well. This is really cool. It gives you a very visual way to see how users are actually using your application. So you can see here where they start on their first screen, where they go to the second screen, the third screen, and so forth. And you can see these little red kind of streams spilling out of here. That's where people are actually dropping off. So that's where people are ending their sessions. This gives you a very nice way to quickly say, what are the top paths to my application? And it's especially nice when you have an idea of what the top paths should be, or you have an idea of what you want to achieve. You want to drive someone from screen A to screen B. And then you can go here in the engagement flow report and see, is that actually happening, or is the reality somewhat different? And I want to show you just a quick feature of this. You can actually click on one of these nodes, and you can highlight the traffic here. And so the node I clicked on is actually this IAP window. And that's where the user is presented with a list of items they might want to buy for in-app purchases. Now what's interesting here is there's actually a button in the application so that when you're playing the game, there's a button right there that you can press that takes you right to that window. And you can see that node represented here. But the number of users who actually go from that button right to the IAP window is pretty low. And actually, in fact, the most common path is for people to actually back out to the main menu and then go to the in-app payments window. Now, that may be actually costing you in in-app payment. You may be getting less in-app revenue than you might, because when you really want to sell something in this game is when people are right in the middle of playing it and have that real sort of emotional sense that they need to get this item very quickly. So we may want to look, after looking at this report, at making that button that's in the game, that's displayed right in the game, make that a little bit bigger so people aren't backing out to the main menu. So that's the engagement flow report. And there's a whole lot more you can do actually with all of these reports I'm showing you. But I'm just going to show you the standard view. Of course, you can apply all kinds of segments and do many other things. So I encourage you to go in and check it out. But I'm just giving you sort of a top-level overview. And the next report I want to show you for engagement, again, this is all about, let me switch to actually here we go. So this is the crashes and exceptions report. And again, this may be primarily for developers, but it's also very useful for marketers as well. It gives you a sense of what your users are actually experiencing. So again, as Adam said, if you're putting a lot of effort, as I'm sure you all are as marketers, into acquiring really high-quality users, it is a shame to have problems with the software prevent them from having a great experience. So crashes and exceptions is really a brand new report. We haven't done it yet in web. It's brand new for apps. And it lets you see really clearly by app version. So here we can see, this is his iOS app, and we can see as he releases each new version, the number of crashes in each version. So this gives you a sense of how are we trending over time towards a more stable app and a great experience. So here we actually have, in this move up to 4.1, we actually have way many more crashes than we had before. You'd want to look into it further because you don't know, you kind of want to normalize it based on the number of sessions, but this might be actually a flag that we might want to take a look and see what actually these crashes are. And you can, I just want to show you really quickly, you can get some data out of that as to what exactly these crashes are by clicking on the exception description primary dimension. And this will show you some qualitative information that's pulled from the stack trace usually that shows you a little bit more about which crashes these actually are, and you can tell that to your developers, or your developers can just go ahead and sign in and look at it themselves. And here's that information. Great. So that's the crashes and exceptions report. And I want to move on now. So we've talked a little bit about measuring engagement, so network and devices, seeing what hardware people are actually using engagement flow to see how people are moving through the app, see if the paths that you think are going to be the top paths are actually the top paths, and if not, what you might want to do to fix that or to push people in a different direction. And then also crashes and exceptions here. And I want to jump now into outcomes, which is sort of the final bucket in this, there we go, in this sort of customer life cycle, right? People often will cycle through engagement and outcomes over and over again throughout the course of an app. But for the case of this, we'll just say outcomes kind of that last section where they actually complete a goal or they actually purchase something. And to start with outcomes, I want to talk about e-commerce. For those of you who have used analytics on the web, you're going to be pretty familiar with what we're offering here in terms of e-commerce measurement. It's the same types of data in terms of transactions and items and SKUs. You can give us a whole bunch of data that describes the transaction itself, the money, the revenue that's coming in, which products they were, what the SKUs were, etc. But it's tailored for app developers here, and in particular for in-app purchases. So here on the e-commerce overview page, you can see really quickly at a glance for a given time period what your total in-app revenue is. And obviously that's going to be a really big, probably maybe one of the most important metrics for a lot of apps out there. You can also see the volume of transactions. But some of the most useful metrics on this are actually the e-commerce conversion rate, which shows you the rate at which people actually, of those people who start a session, how many people actually purchase something. And that's a really interesting metric to have to be able to calculate or to watch how you're doing in terms of monetizing users over time. And the other thing that's interesting here is the average value, which is the average value of an in-app purchase. And this is another metric you might want to track over time because it shows you when people do decide to make a purchase, how much on average are they purchasing. So right now for this particular app, it's 17 cents. It's kind of relative because that may be a lot or maybe a little for you depending on the volume that you do. But if we were to track this 17 cents over time and we could push it up to 20 cents, for example, that's a pretty big deal for us. So it's actually a very useful metric. One other thing I wanted to call out here was that we also show you at a glance what your top products are. So in this particular game, the game sells bombs and magic potions. And the bomb item, which actually helps you clear the game board very quickly, it's kind of like a Tetris thing. That one is actually the top seller, followed by magic potions and so forth. So you can get a really quick sense of what products are actually being purchased, the total revenue, and also those useful metrics like conversion rate and average value, which are particularly useful when you track them over time. And the last thing I want to show you for outcomes is the goal overview. And again, if you're using analytics on the web, this will probably be pretty familiar to you. But if your app doesn't necessarily count an in-app purchase as the goal, maybe that's a click on an ad, or maybe it's a sign-up, or maybe you do a mix of e-commerce and other goals. Our goals give you the option to create other goals that are based on outcomes that are non-sort of monetary. So in this case, this application, this game, has defined, as you can see down here, one goal, which is a click on an ad. So every time somebody clicks on an ad, our developer here is sending us an event that says there was a click on an ad, and to count that as a goal. So this goals overview report shows you very quickly the total number of goal completions, and in this case we're looking at ad clicks. And again, sort of like the e-commerce report, you get some pretty interesting calculated metrics like goal conversion rate. So we know that 2.67% of sessions in this time period resulted or had an ad click occur sometime during that session. So that's a very useful metric to track progress towards your goals, whatever they may be, over time. You can also assign value to goals, and this is very similar to on the web. So in this case, we've assigned a value of $1, but it could be whatever you want. So if an ad click to you is worth 50 cents, you could assign it to 50 cents as well. The other cool thing about this report is that you can actually see where the goal completions are happening. So those ad clicks, it's interesting here actually, the second most popular goal completion location is actually on the in-app purchases window. So the in-app purchases window pops up, gives you a list of things you can buy. It also shows an ad at the top. And it looks like, as far as ad clicks go, that's actually one of the top spots for where people actually click the ads. So between our e-commerce reporting and our goals reporting, whatever your goals are, we offer some really nice standard reports that surface the kind of information you want to know about outcomes to you very quickly. So how much revenue are you making? How are you trending over time in terms of revenue per session? And we do the same for goals as well. So that's the outcome bucket. So we've talked a bit about acquisition, where users come from, how to assign value back to those original sources. We talked about engagement, what they do when they get there, the devices that they're using, the engagement flow report to see how they're moving through the application, and the crashes and exceptions report to track the stability of the app, make sure it's a really solid experience for users. And then lastly, we just talked about outcomes. So how much money they're spending, what are they buying, and then what goals are they completing, where are they completing them, etc. This is all in the standard reports. Again, you can create your own reports and go even deeper than this. I'm just giving you really the surface on these reports, so I'd encourage you to check them out. But one last thing I wanted to show you. This is my one last thing moment on this call. Some of you might be familiar with our real-time reports on the web, but we also offer the same real-time reporting on apps as well. So this gives us, right now, what we're looking at is the number of people around the world that are currently playing this developer's game. You can see the number of active users in the app. You can see your app versions, so you can see what versions are actually out there in real time. You can also see the top screens, and actually the in-app payments window right now is the top screen, so that's kind of hopefully what we like to see, as long as that translates into e-commerce revenue. And it's cool, you can also see where in the world these people are, because it turns out his app is actually very popular in Russia and China, it looks like, which is pretty interesting. So that's it. I hope that gives you an overview of the reports. Again, this is really just scratching the surface here. You can dive into these things more deeply. And Adam and I can take your questions at this point.
Awesome. So we have quite a few really good questions and answers. I'm going to ask them, and Andrew, I think we can both jump in and answer them together. So the first question I have is actually, it was really cool you went through a game application, but do you have any recommendations on goals or outcomes for a brand's application if they're just content or utility based? If they're like the Skull Candy app, for example, they have an app that lets you check surfing weather and conditions to see if you should go surfing. So do you have any recommendations there for a brand, not something that has direct monetization in the app?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So oftentimes the goal isn't necessarily going to be purchasing something. One of the things that's nice about the goals kind of framework that we have is that you can configure goals based on a whole wide variety of signals. So you can create a goal, for example, for a screen view. So if there's something that's really important for you as a brand, you want somebody to view this one page. You want them to get there and view whatever message it is. You can mark that page or that screen, as a goal. So a screen view can be a goal, for example, not just a purchase. You can also do duration as another goal. So if as a brand you really want people to be engaged for a long period of time, you can go in and create a goal for the average amount of time on a session. So that can be another useful signal as well. And then lastly, I'd mention you can also do screens per visit. So duration is a good one, but screens per visit also gives you a sense of how deeply users are engaging with your app. So as a brand, you might want to say, well, one screen per visit, that's not a very high amount of engagement, so we really want to set a goal for 5 screens deep, right? We want them to we want people to spend some time with the app, and you can create a goal on that as well.
Yeah, and one other recommendation that I would have to that question is when you do set up goals, assign a value to them. Work with your marketing team to determine what is the value of this goal, because then your reports are going to be much more fleshed out. You're going to see revenue associated with goals, and just like on web, you want to understand what is the value of a given goal. I'll take the next question. The next question is there a Google Analytics app for iOS? So at the current time, we actually don't have one, but there are a host of very good apps to get your GA metrics on your iOS mobile device. One I will recommend offhand is Quicklytics. Check that one out. It's spelled just like it sounds, and that one's actually developed by a friend of mine, Eduardo. Really good stuff. So our next question is, and just to go in for you, is Google Analytics able to track mobile downloads and tie back to the campaign using UTM tags?
Yes, great question. That is exactly how that works. So basically what you would do is take these UTM tags. For those on the call who aren't familiar with them, it's a set of parameters that you can put on a URL that sort of describes the source of a user. So it describes a campaign or a marketing effort of some kind. And the way that attribution works for mobile app analytics generally, but also for Android specifically, is that you would send the user to Google Play with those UTM parameters in the link, the Google Play link. And if the user downloads the app right there, Google Play will actually bundle up those parameters and pass them through to the application so that GA can then send them back. And then you can tie the download back to that original source, and you also get all that nice downstream attribution. So if that user goes on to make a purchase or complete some goal, we also tie that back to the original campaign as well. And you definitely want to check out the developer site, developers.google.com/analytics. There's a campaign measurement guide for Android and also for iOS, so definitely check that out because, it offers some really detailed code snippets and things that can help you get started with that really easily.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew. Time for just a couple more. This is actually a good one. For in-app engagement, Gary asked, do you need to define each event action in the app to show top content, or will the SDK grab them in the app automatically?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We offer some options here. So if you use, in the Android SDK, we have, let me start over. I'll say both in the iOS and Android SDKs, we have options for automatic screen reporting. So you can check out the documentation. Again, it's on the developer's site. But what that will do is basically you kind of copy-paste a few lines, sort of like you would on the web. You just kind of tag the app. And that will automatically send screen views back to GA. So if you implement this automatic screen measurement, you will get screens and top content populated in your reports automatically. Now, it's also, you can take that even further because you can send us events. You can, if you're working with different kinds of content, like fragments on Android, for example, you can send us screen views representing those fragments that go beyond what we do for our automated solution. So you can take it a lot further, but at a very basic level, we do offer some automated ways to send us at least screens. Events you'll have to configure on your own.
I just want to break in before you give that next question, Adam. Thanks again, everyone, for attending. We're going to take one or two more questions, but before you leave, please don't forget to respond to that survey.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, just a couple more questions. Someone asked, do you recommend segmenting tablet and phone traffic to conduct analysis on the same app so you see them separately, or should you just look at that together? Is that like a good segment?
I think that it is. From what I've heard, I think it obviously depends on the app, of course, but I think it's worth doing because I think tablet and phone can represent some very different user behavior. I want to point to some numbers, but I don't know. I can't think of them off the top of my head. But I think when people are using tablets, it's very often actually in the context of their home or in a different environment that's not when they're actually on the go. So I think tablet can sometimes be a little bit different from mobile. Sometimes they get lumped together. I think they should really be separated out because I think tablet represents sort of a different, it's really more akin to a desktop or a laptop in my mind than it is to mobile. So for that reason, I think it is useful to separate and segment.
Cool. Another question, and I'll start out by answering this one. If I've only ever used web analytics, how steep is the learning curve between mobile and app for advanced analysis? And I like to say, I think for everything, we've tried to make this tool. If you're already a rock star with regular GA web, you should be able to kick butt with mobile app analytics almost instantaneously. I actually think it's pretty much the same to conduct segmentation here, and really all that's different is a lot of the language that we use. So we wanted to make the tool as intuitive as possible, and I don't know if you have any other feedback on that, Andrew.
No, I would agree. I mean, I think it's everything that you've learned as it applies to web analytics in terms of, you obviously want to measure acquisition, outcomes, engagement, all the main strategies you're going to use on web. You can really come to these app analytics reports and sort of bring the same mindset, and I think that's really probably the hardest thing. You really don't have to relearn the big concepts that you already know. The only thing that's going to be really different is the implementation, and even there, it's not too dissimilar from the web, and we've really tried to make these SDKs super easy to work with. We've had a lot of feedback from developers that it is very easy, and they're surprised at how easy it is to get started with it, with using the GA SDKs. So implementation might be the biggest difference between the two, but for an Android or iOS developer, we've really made it pretty simple.
Cool. And I think we'll just take one or two more. Denny asks, we're using Google Analytics with mobile apps, but with web properties. Is the implementation of the SDK different for app properties, or can we just replicate the property ID in our app, or just replace the property ID?
Yeah, that's a good question. So one thing to clarify, the distinction is actually at the profile level. So you can create a bunch of different properties, and within those properties exist app profiles and web profiles. So you can use the same web property, you can use the same property and send data from your website or an app that's using V1 of the SDKs, and then within that property, you can create an app profile and send data to the very same property. It'll just only show up in that app profile. So to clarify, you can use the same property if you want, but you'll need to create an app profile in order to get access to these app reports and in order for the data from the SDKs to actually show up.
Thanks, Andrew. I just got a notification from our technical team that it looks like the wrong survey appeared as the pop-up window, but you can still get to the correct survey for this webinar by just clicking that red little widget on your console. So please do click that widget and fill out the survey, and we apologize for that confusion. Sorry, Adam, go ahead.
Awesome. Well, I think that's about all the time that we have for today, so I think that's a good point to end. If you can complete the survey at the end, that'd be awesome. It helps us improve these, make them better for you guys in the future, and you could win a Nexus 7. So thank you so much for your time today, and if there's any other follow-up questions, feel free to tweet them at me. I'm at Adam Singer on Twitter or at Google Analytics. You can also plus them to me. I'm plus Adam Singer, and Andrew is plus Andrew Wales.
All right. Thanks so much, everyone. We really appreciate your attendance. Have a great day.